Well, this morning I am going to ask Keith, come join me up here. And while Keith's coming, I wanted to say Keith and Edie, Kyron and Harper are just a part of our community here, and we're so grateful and grateful for friendship. I see you. And for your family, I'm glad to see each one here today. You packed a pew. You get an A+, man. That's but
this is the first time we've been together in a long time.
that's great. I am so. I'll tell you, Keith. I'm honored to know you, and I'm grateful that you can be here today. But I'm grateful for the work that you're doing. I know, as a matter of fact, talking about work, you have a coworker back, Bob, and you have some history there at Channel 19, huh?
A lot of history. He was my first boss.
Oh, is that right?
Many years, 50 plus years.
Well, now here's your chance. No.
I could tell sure.
Bob said he has stories.
He probably does. Since I was in the news department, he probably has a lot more than me.
No, I'll tell you, Keith and Edie and their family are our neighbors. We're neighbors. We're friends. And we have watched you and Edie really give yourself away in a beautiful way, in a challenging way, but in a way, and I know there was pain, a great deal of pain with it, but out of that came, I think, in your own words, a rediscovered kind of purpose for your life. And the work that you're doing about grandparents raising their grandchildren, that is a need that is local. It's with us. It's true in Guatemala too, where our team goes. You know, we have grandparents raising their grandchildren, and so, but we have that issue here. But Keith, I thought just a couple of things for us to kind of share with us your journey. Maybe y'all's journey, whatever you want to share about how your journey of becoming parents again as grandparents with your grandchildren.
It all started about 10 years ago. I was about to retire, and one of our first grandchildren, not our first, but Kyron came into the world, and we were introduced into the world of babies born addicted to drugs.
Keith.
Oh, I'm sorry. Babies born addicted.
It's
we were introduced into the world of children and babies born addicted to drugs. Kyron was addicted to probably every drug in the world under the sun, and he was in intensive care at the NICU at Townsville Hospital for several months. A couple years later, Harper was born. Harper was born, when you say just a baby, she was born just addicted to LSD and heroin. When you just say just, but compared to what Kyron was addicted to, it was a blessing. And she was only in the NICU for about a month. And then they came home with us. Harper came home with us the day that she got out of the hospital. And that started our journey because we were lost. We didn't know where to go, what to do, how to do it, or anything else. We were starting parenting 2.0. Right. Is what they're calling it. And then all of a sudden we find out, boy, we're not in this journey by ourselves. It took us quite a while to figure that out, but we did. And unfortunately, when we found out, there was nothing out there. We were just like the lady in Guatemala. There was no one to help. There is no one to help. And so we were like, well, what can I do? And then all of a sudden the pandemic hit. And the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden our phones started ringing off the hook because some of the grandparents that we knew started calling and saying, we need help, we can't find food, we can't find places to go, we can't find even help with education. You know, the kids were stuck at home. A lot of these grandparents were not accustomed to working on a computer. Some of them didn't even have web access. So it was a different world. So we started helping. I started looking back on some of my friends that I knew from the days when I was in broadcasting, and we came up with some friends that helped us out. And just in the 4 years since the pandemic, we've donated over 100 tons of food to grand families throughout Alabama. Most of that is in North Alabama, from the Shoals to DeKalb County, and from Coleman north, but we're scattered throughout the state as well. And so that's help. We do wow, pajamas, school supplies, the food. We try to help with advocacy. We try to help we need to be a shoulder for these folks to cry on, because they're like us. They're introduced to a lot of things that they were not expecting, and that's
Right.
in some cases they didn't know their children was born addicted. There's a lady right down the street here who used to run a daycare, who a few months ago they got a call that there was a granddaughter that they didn't even know about, a grandson, I'm sorry, that they didn't even know about, and they were having problems and they didn't know where to send him, so they sent him to this grandparent. And it's in our backyard. It's
Right.
everywhere. It's not just, it's everywhere.
That's the thing I really wanted us all to hear too, is that this is a real issue. And there are a lot of grandparents and a lot of extended family who are raising family members, and it's a real need. And when you were talking about how much food, I meant to say a moment ago too. We've been recipients, this church and the Grove Cafe, and we're so grateful for that. But watching what you and Edie do week in and week out, all that food and people who are coming, and I know that's just what you see, because someone has to coordinate that and make that happen. And I know y'all are behind the scenes on that, doing that. It's great. It's needed work. I know that, and it's important work. And I'm so glad you're here, because I think it's a beautiful picture of service, and it raises a need as well in the community that needs to be seen more clearly.
A huge need. In fact, the figures just came out a few weeks ago that 35% of grandparents in Alabama are raising grandchildren. 35%. That's the ones that we know about that have now, they've either put in for the census, or whether they put it on their income tax. That's what the government figure is 35%. So that's a lot of grandparents. Then there are those that are not accounted for. Those that may live in Section 8 housing that don't want anything to do with any kind of government officials, so
Right.
they just slide under the rug.
Right.
They don't want anybody to know anything, and there's a bunch of those as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. I want to get back to the work and what we can do, how to plug in, and what this community can do to get our arms around. Because here's the deal: at the end of the day, going back to something Kim said, we would never want any of us, a family, to think, I've been forgotten, or that I can't say. Because I think a lot of this too, sometimes people are afraid to say, I need a little help here. And man, being a grandparent and having to raise children, that's a challenge. It's got to be challenging. I thought, out of your own story, how has raising grandchildren impacted Edie and you and your life? How has that been?
Well, it's changed our life. We were planning on traveling. We were planning on doing the things that retirees do. We had a set of friends that we were going to go travel with, go out to eat, go to the movies, do all those things that you can do when you're free. And we couldn't do that because we had a baby and a 3-year-old to start with. And now they're 7 and 10. I think that's right. That's what me. I'm terrible with
They're
that.
giving you yes. You
As
did
long as they
good.
give me a
Yeah.
yes, that's all. And we lost those friends. Those people that we retired with, we lost those friends because, they did not want to have a newborn and another child go out with them. They wanted to go out on their own. They wanted to be able to enjoy life without their children. They were empty nesters. And we completely understand that. So we found different friends. We found friends like the bishops who came along several years ago, and they're here this morning, and they have a son that's from Guatemala.
That's great.
So
It's full circle.
It's a full circle.
A
here.
full circle.
Yeah. And so we just found a different family, and every day we find more family members. We find more. This area, New Market, Alabama, I don't know if it's just a hotbed, but the vast majority of the people that come pick up food from us on Monday night live in the New Market area, maybe Hayes Green, Rainville,
Right.
in the general area. But when I say, New Market's probably in the center of the area. But, yeah, they come from all over, but most of them come from right here in our backyard.
So the need is not just on the other side of Huntsville. It's here.
No, it's here. It's right here. There's no question that it is right here. And we could do so much more, but we're limited to is just Edie and I. And while we've been working with another statewide nonprofit, we got to the point now that we said, okay, we just got to go out on our own.
Right.
So we have started our own nonprofit, Grandparents as Parents, and we were just issued an EIN number. So we're on our way to becoming a verifiable nonprofit, so we can do what we need to do. But so now we're just on our way of doing that, and Brandon and his wife are helping us with that.
That's great.
As we begin that journey.
That's great. I know you've been an ambassador of sorts on this topic, all the way from Washington D.C. to Montgomery, and doing the work that it requires to raise the issue and find resources that are available for this work. And I think that's so important. I think churches, this church and I think other churches, we've talked about this, that this is work that churches, I hope will get our arms around and help, because there is a real need here in the community. I wanted to go back, though, for a moment on the personal side of things. In some ways, though, becoming a parent again as a grandparent. In some ways, though, you mentioned to me how you rediscovered a sense of purpose in that.
Yeah, I think that our purpose has changed in the fact that even the Harper and Kyron, as our family unit, they know when we say, well, we've got to go, they're just ready. They'll travel for an hour in a car, they'll travel for 10 hours in a car. They're the best travelers you could possibly ask. Whether we go on a plane or a car, they're happy.
That's great.
And as long as we stop and get them something to eat, and they get to go to the bathroom occasionally, they're ready to go. So, and most of the time, we have to stop several times and get something to eat for.
Yeah.
Just have her chocolate.
Well, understood. That goes well when we travel, Vicki and I, for Vicki.
I'm not going down that road.
You know her, so yeah.
But churches are so vital to the communities, and we have a plethora of churches around here.
Right.
And it would be great if there was a central location to where grandparents could get together and talk, possibly have a meal, and just begin to understand that they're not in this alone.
Right.
Because Edie and I thought we were out in this world all by ourselves. We thought we were the only grandparents that were raising grandchildren, and we're just one of 3 million.
Right. Right.
It's just a lot.
So something like a support group, even.
Oh, a support group, respite. We love these children. Good Lord, I don't know if I could ever love 2 kids more than I love these 2. And it is just amazing to me that there's no respite out there. Now, if you're a foster parent, and we love our foster parents, Trina and Brandon are foster parents, and we love them, and we love all our foster parents, and we don't ever talk bad about them. They get respite. Grandparents get nothing. We get absolutely nothing. No help from anyone. So if there's a place that we could go and grandparents could go sit down and talk about their problems, talk about things like what's the best way to educate these kids? What about adopting these kids? Is it better to adopt, or is it better to leave them alone? What happens if the bio comes back into the picture and starts causing problems? Because that happens, because you have to remember that the reason that most of us are in this situation are because of drugs. 98% of the reason that grandparents are raising their grandchildren are because of opioids. Mm-hmm. Now you also got, you got incarceration, you got deaths, you got just a lot of people just walk away. Here's Granny, and they walk away and they don't see the kids anymore. So it's just, but 98% are drugs, which is pretty bad when you get down to it.
Well, yeah, I mean that too is a problem. But I going back to what churches can help in the sense of, for one, I like the idea of having support, but respite. For instance, I know we talked having a night where we could show a movie, have kids here, and let you grandparents go off and sit down somewhere and rest
Yeah.
for a little bit.
Or just go to McDonald's and get a hamburger and sit down and talk to each other and have an adult conversation that we don't have to have at 10 or 11 o'clock at night when you get in bed. And trust me, you're exhausted. After you're, 67 years old. I don't know who said 63 earlier, but I'm 67 and I feel every bit of it. And Edie's a lot younger than I am, so I can. She's tired because she does 90% of the running around. And so when we go to bed, it's like, the lights are out and we're gone. We don't talk.
Yeah.
So it'd be great if there was a place that we could all sit down and talk. It's needed.
Right, it is needed. That kind of help. It seems to me to get our arms around. Here at Locust Grove, we talk a lot about trying to minister to families. We've got a laser-like focus on global missions in Guatemala, and so much of that work is around families there, and going from family to family in the school. But finding ways here tangibly to get our arms around a need with families, this is an area I think that's really something that we can be a help with as a church, and also churches. A network of churches, like you say, because we're here to help the community. We're here to help each other. At the heart, that's what we're called to do in Christ. We're called to show hospitality, to be of help, to serve one another. And so, again, the work that you're doing is life-giving. I've seen it, and I'm grateful for it. As a grandparent, what lessons have you learned in the area of what have you learned about love and sacrifice and laying yourself down, the selflessness of parenting again at this point in life?
It's hard, number one. It really is. When Harper or Kyron want to go run around the playground or run around outside or go fishing, sometimes it's hard, because as we get older, we go to the doctors more, and so time is sometimes spent elsewhere. So it's hard sometimes to find time to do the things that they need to do. And we're homeschooling because Kyron has various ailments that prevent him from going to school,
right,
which presents another problem all of itself that we could talk about. But so Edie is taking care of that, and so it's just hard. But it's just, I don't know what it is. If it's just a different kind of love, because we all love our grandkids. Even we got a great grandbaby.
I know, that's wonderful.
Good Lord, wow. There's just so much love,
The human heart expands, doesn't it?
Oh, it really does.
You think you can't love, but it just expands.
It really does. And we love our grandfamilies.
Sure.
And one thing, when I say grandfamilies, when the government puts a new title on something, there's a problem. And the government came up and started calling everybody grandfamilies. And grandfamilies, it can be a brother, sister, aunt, uncle, cousin, anybody that's raised in their relative is classified as a grand family. That doesn't matter what age they are or anything else. And we tell you, we're getting more and more great grandfamilies. More and more great grandfamilies. That's when you start talking about that. That's pretty bad when you got a great grandparent that all of a sudden gets a 4 or 5 or even a baby dropped on them, and they're say 80 years old.
Right.
That's hard.
Yes. Oh, so yes.
It's a sacrifice, but it's something we know we have to do.
I agree, and it's something we're called to do. I believe as Christians in the community, we're called to do this. And in hearing this, and just I want both the imagination and faith to merge, and I want us to remember that we all have gifts. They're different gifts, but we all have something to offer and contribute to the world around us that will make us better. And this is one way we can do it, and I'm so grateful again for, you talked a little bit about this, but talk to us a little bit about the need and the help that's needed, ways and anything you want to share with us at this point about this particular need and the work in the context of as a church. What can we do?
Well, we try so hard to help these grandfamilies with everything. we work with another nonprofit on energizing homes. And when we do that, we try to lower their utility bills by 20%, which is a lot. Because you have to remember one thing, when most of your grandfamilies, most of your single grandmothers that are living on $1,000 a month Social Security, they do without for that child that they're raising. So they may not go to the doctor. They may not pick up their medicine that they should be taking. They may do without food so that their child, their grandchild may have food, or may have to buy a book, or may have to do something else. So grandparents are doing without for their grandchildren. And it would just be great if there was some place or if there was help, whether it's financial help, whether it's just someone to be able to talk to, or if there's a business out there that wants to help with adoptions, or if there's a business out there that wanted to help with school supplies, anything that we could wrap our hands around. It's like for us, we're just now starting, and so Edie and I are pulling out almost $350 a month out of our pocket to pay for storage. When you start talking, we've got food we've got a little closet here that we have food and stuff, and supplies in that we can use, but we've got 2 storage units that are pretty packed, and we're paying for those out of because it's got some Christmas in it, because Edie is a big Christmas person. We started this thing called Christmas for Kin, which y'all have helped with a couple of years, even with the one year we did it from we distributed the gifts from here. Last year Edie did, and I know I'm gonna get this wrong, 200 families with over 300 kids. Yes, I got it.
That's
which is a lot. And she did this on her own. And just imagine if there was 300 enough presents. And we're talking when Edie does it, it's different from if you go somewhere else. It's this child puts in a Christmas wish, and that child gets what's on that list. She finds a sponsor for that person who buys what's on that list. So that child gets up on Christmas morning and does have a Christmas. It's not like they get up and they get a box of crayons and I'm sorry, Brandon and Trina helped tremendously also. I'm getting the cues. You told me about cues that you got, so I'm getting cues.
Well, I do. I get them from the back there. The lady back in the back. She lets me know if we go too long.
So we had this, we have it. Last year, 300 gifts. They were in our house. We didn't have a place to sit. We had a place to sit. The kids sat on the floor. I had a chair. She had a spot for where she worked on the computer on the couch. And then everything else, you couldn't get in the front door. You couldn't get in the garage. You couldn't get in the bedroom. You couldn't get anywhere in the house because there was gifts there. And then it was a matter of trying to distribute those gifts from our house, which was another problem, trying to find them. So it was a challenge. And this year she's hoping to do 400 families, 400 kids. 400 kids, which is a lot.
Yeah,
we're gonna be coming.
You're gonna need help in space.
We're gonna be coming down to your house.
Come on down.
Be delivering.
But that's the need. The need is there, and we can work together. I think it's a beautiful example of service, Keith. What you and Edie are doing with your life. Again, life came. It happened, and instead of running from it, you and Edie said yes, and you leaned into it. And even the work, not only the work that you're doing, as a family, but the work that you're doing in getting something started for this community is a gift. And I am grateful for that, and I know we all are. And we want to be of help. We want to let this be the beginning of a conversation that will end up in tangible ways, because the kind of help you're talking about goes all the way. I'm looking, Connie's over there, from legal services all the way across the spectrum, from just support, encouragement, hope, help, food, and I know so much of that you're tracking down. You're finding places that will offer those help. That kind of help, and it's life-giving, and I'm grateful for that. I wanted to ask before we quit. Yeah, go ahead.
Because we're helping just on a local level, state level, and national level. We were very fortunate that we got the state of Alabama. We met with Lieutenant Governor Ainsworth last spring, and within 2 months of meeting with him, he had a bill passed in the Alabama legislature coming up with an advisory council for grandparents raising their grandchildren, which is good because I'm on that council, and it's pretty good. It's got a whole group of bureaucrats on it, and then there's a few grandparents. So we're getting our voice out in Washington. I'm on various committees. In fact, I got to go to Washington this next week to meet with the Health and Human Services group.
Yeah.
And everybody's starting to realize that this is a national problem and it's getting worse. The United Nations has deemed 2024 as the year of the family. And last summer, I was in Washington I was on a panel where we discussed the issues that families across this world, and there were people from all over we all experienced the same thing. It doesn't matter if you're in Guatemala, Okinawa, England, France,
Right.
or in Alabama.
Right.
We've all got the same problems and the same needs.
You're exactly right.
You know?
And the thing is, to be in need, there could be a certain loneliness to that, and a sense of being forgotten as kin. And boy, to me, the church, and no, I'm not preaching at this moment, but it seems to me that that's what the church at its best has to offer: hope and help and encouragement and all the things that Christ stood for, that he lived for, and calls us to. So
What grandparents need and want, because they're lonely.
Yeah, exactly.
When Edie and I had each other, we were lonely.
Right.
Until we found our new family.
Right.
And we were lonely. Until
Right.
we found y'all. I mean, good Lord, look what y'all do for us.
All right, back at you.
You know.
And we're grateful. We're grateful for the friendship and grateful for the.
Absolutely.
Well, one other thing, and now we'll quit. But what are you most grateful for? What are you and Edie most grateful for along this journey? How does that look like in your life, Keith?
I think I'm grateful for the friendship that because I mean, these are real friends. These are friends that if I call up someone that, man, they're there. You know, I mean, Brandon and Trina, if I called them, Brandon would drive from Madison, Alabama to meet me. I don't have any question about that. My brother would probably do the same thing. I say probably, but more likely he would.
He would.
He would.
We know and love him. Of course he is.
And that's that's a closeness too that, we were never close up until the last few years. And now, we don't talk every day, but we talk about every day. And that's something that, and it's been a blessing also just to get to know my brother.
That's a joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a blessing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So out of brokenness and hurt comes joy and purpose as well, and giving yourself away to serve. Man, it's a beautiful picture. And Keith, thank you so much.
We're all in the same boat.
We are in the same boat.
We just have a different story.
That's right. That's right.
Everybody just has a story.
Yes.
And yours is different from mine, but in the end, in some way, they probably go together.
They do. They do. And we're here to help each other.
Well, we hope so. We appreciate it.
God bless you, my
Thank you very
friend.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
for
Thank
joining
you.
me this morning, and you and your family. Yeah. Thank you. I told Keith that I was going to have a little fun after we talked. Now for the sermon. Just kidding. That was the sermon. Their example is the sermon. The work that you're doing, the work that we're all called to do with our life. I mean, the passage itself is a reminder that we're all servants. We're called to serve. It's not really an option for Christians. It's just not. We're called to serve on each other, to follow the example of Christ. And actually, we're reminded that when we do serve the needs of others, we're really serving Christ. You remember, don't you, when he said, "Truly, I tell you that whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it for me." When you give your gift, and you give it away in joy in the name of Christ, man, there is purpose to that. you're doing something beautiful. And so I challenge us on this day, and Keith, your example, you and Edie, has challenged us. Service is not just about doing good deeds and performing acts of charity. It's about showing love and compassion to those who have a need. And even if it's difficult and inconvenient, it's about being willing to put our own, sometimes our own desire and will to the side in order to serve.